Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to our Facebook Lives. We have our Facebook Lives every Thursday at 4:30, where we talk about maternal health and the intersection of whatever it is, the topic that we're talking about. And today we're talking about race in maternal health. I am super excited to bring light to this topic. It's what LunaYou is all about. It's what we rest on and it's what we stand on, and why we even started this program, because race is a huge factor in maternal health. I have a super special guest with me, Vanessa Vigil. She is here, and she has a wealth of knowledge in this space. I'm going to introduce her in just a little bit, but a little bit about LunaYou. If you're joining us and you want to know more about the program, LunaYou is designed to help women feel supported no matter where they are in their pregnancy and 3 months postpartum. It helps them feel respected during their pregnancy and helps them to find their voice from within so that they can advocate for themselves. The first 25 women that become a part of our program receive a free Fitbit to track their activity level and to track their sleep patterns, as well as a blood pressure cuff, which the New York Times says is especially important in this quarantine time, to track your blood pressure regularly so that you can be and how you can be in power of your own numbers and your own health. And so it's really important in the first 25 women that become a part of the program, get those things. And then also weekly check-ins from me as a well-being coach to make sure that you're on track, that you're able to speak up for yourself, and that you have a healthy birth outcome, and that you yourself are whole and well. So if you are on here and you know a mom that would love to be a part of this, give her this gift of well-being. Send her this link, just text her name, tag her name, and we'll be sure to reach out to her. Or if you yourself are expecting, reach out to us and we will be sure to connect with you to get you a part of this program. So we're super excited. So today we're talking about race and maternal health, and like why this is so important. So I reached out to the expert, the resident expert that knows and that is doing the work in this. And I'm super excited to introduce her today. So, Vanessa Vigil currently serves as the medical care manager at Neighborhood Health Plan of Rhode Island, where she works with Rhode Island's most vulnerable communities, addressing their medical and community needs. Vanessa is a strong advocate for community based change in the healthcare field. Her passions for health equity led her to pursue a master's in science and healthcare leadership from Brown University. Vanessa's work is focused on creating innovative systems that promote culturally responsive practices across the healthcare system and communities. Simply put, she's a healthcare advocate and she's an equity architect, which I absolutely love. An equity architect, build girl. I love that. So, Vanessa, hi, how are you?
Hey, how are you? Thank you, everybody who's tuning in.
This is awesome. So this conversation has always been important, but I like that we're having this conversation now because I feel that people are listening and people are starting to see that, wow, race is impacting every place that, we exist, right? And especially maternal health. Just some little statistics that we have that we kind of share out and why this is so important. So, there are about 3.5 million women who have babies, Black, white, Latina, all across the country. 3.5 million people who have babies. But 830 women die globally from things that could have been prevented, right? From things that could have been stopped, that could have been known ahead of time, in tracking numbers better. There's tons of reasons. The reason why this is so important and where race comes into play, because Black and Latino women are 3 times more likely to suffer from maternal deaths or morbidity. So having preeclampsia, eclampsia, or any other complications or risk factors in their pregnancy. And we looked at the statistics and we looked at everything, and all that it boils down to is race. It's race. And it has very little to do with income level, education level. Like we've seen this in Serena Williams, we've seen this in Beyonce, we've seen this in people who have access, people who have education, people who are, out there that can speak up for themselves and that can do it, but they're still struggling to have equity within the healthcare as they're giving birth, something that is natural to millions of women every year. But if you're Black or Latino, you're more likely to suffer from complications. So that's what this conversation is about. This is what it rests on, and this is what it is. So, Vanessa, why do you think it's so important to discuss race in maternal health?
I mean, the fact that it needs to be a question is wrong in itself, right? But let's just get to the nitty gritty, right? So the US is like a global outlier, right? It's the only industrialized country where the rate of maternal mortality is actually going up than going down. So we have to think about that. What's going on? What are we doing wrong? And how do we fix this issue? Racial, economic disparities. What are we doing to prevent these maternal mortalities? And the way that I look at it, honestly, I think it's a our generational problem, right? Because if you look at studies, women in America are 50% more likely to die from childbirth than our mothers were. So what's going on? What are we needing? What is our call to action? What are we doing to change whatever is going on right now? And is it working? We look at it from like acute effect, right? Our providers. What are our providers doing to make sure that they're eliminating these disparities?
Yeah. Then
here comes implicit biases, right? For example, I think that many providers are trained, let's say, or to hone in and amplify our differences, right? They're trained to look at us and from one look see and determine whether we're sick or we're not sick, right? For example, I know that there's a provider that says, if he's pale, he's anemic. But how about Black and brown folks? How are you going to tell whether we're anemic or not? So these are trainings that are being carried out in medical schools that are not culturally sensitive. So what are you going to do about that?
Right. And it starts with the training, right? It starts and then it's ongoing training as they continue in their profession, as they continue to understand and to know the differences and how we're all not the same. Exactly. That's a great example about saying if someone's pale or if someone's that, and not being culturally sensitive to say like, well, can't really be pale. So that's really important to bring up. And it does start at the professional level in doing the training and being willing to hear, right? Like perfection, but it's being willing to learn and coming outside of ourselves to say like, no, or having that initial judgment. That's one of the things that we really deal with at LunaYou with a lot of women is that initial judgment, whether it's I'm married or not married, this is my first, second, third, or whatever number child this is. Just trying to judge my background before even getting to know me, based on what you think you may know, based on what statistics say. We are not numbers, we're people. And that's
right, absolutely. I have a lot of examples, being that I'm a medical care manager for neighborhood health care in Rhode Island. And I think that being a woman of color, I can identify with a lot of the struggles. But now that I'm in different spaces where it's kind of more on the provider side, I can see where the problem lies, right? So Dr. David Williams, he is a professor at Harvard University, and he created a scale, the everyday racism scale, right? So he talks about ideas, narratives, stereotypes that are deeply embedded and it's part of our culture and society in which we're raised, right? So when white folks ask, like, I don't see color, those microaggressions really don't make it easier. So, there's a lot of research that indicates that American culture perceive Black and brown folks to be in a negative light. For example, easy, dangerous, many negative characteristics. And so there's that study also speaks to 70% of Americans have an anti-Black bias.
Wow.
Let's be honest, providers fall under this larger society, right? So what do we do about that? This doesn't reflect the behavior of a bad person. I think that's the message that we really need to get across. It reflects behaviors of normal Americans, reflecting biases, and reflecting the messages about race that they've received. in
Yeah.
their brain.
And that's a good point. And I like how you say like it starts with all of us, right? So we may not be the ones given the training for DEI, or we may not be the ones that are kind of behind the scenes. We may be a healthcare provider ourselves or not. But how can all of us assist women who may be the subject of racism and discrimination?
Uh, so I mean, there's many ways, and it really, at the root of it, is acknowledging their experiences, validating their feelings. Being a woman that I had my own experience with maternal trauma, I almost died. I almost had a hysterectomy, all at the
Mm.
age of 22.
Wow.
Briefly, that experience now that I'm older, I was 22 at the time, I'm 32. This is 10 years ago. And I'm like, now I'm starting to really let those feelings come up again and realize that I really did internalize a lot of those or repress a lot of those feelings. And I'm like, why didn't anybody come to talk to me? Why was my partner just given my child and told to go, not knowing what was going on?
Mm-hmm.
Just the follow up, we have to remember postpartum, antepartum, like there's so many steps that need to be covered.
Yeah.
That's how we can help them, empower them, let them know that we are there, afford them access to government help that is readily available for them, but they're not aware of. Housing. There's so many things that how we can help them, assist them and kind of disrupt this system, this institutionalized racism that women like me we experience, because
Yeah.
there's long-term effects. I worry about all the time. I'm young. I could possibly have another child, but that's really nothing. It's not a thought that crosses my mind because of my experience. Because I felt that I they didn't care about me. I wasn't heard. I wasn't listened to.
Exactly, exactly. And we have those quotes too, like from women of color that are in our program. And even before we started this, the preliminary, the research that we did, where women literally were saying, my last pregnancy nearly killed me. I can't go through that again. Like my pregnancy was so horrible. I didn't have anyone explain to me different things or different things like that. I even have my own personal stories. And that's important. Like Black stories and people of color and women's stories, they matter a lot so that we can understand. So no matter what level that we're in, there's nothing that racism does not touch. Racism touches every aspect of life that we're in. So no matter where you are, no matter where you're working in healthcare or non-healthcare, that there's things that you can do. And the starting point is just listening to stories and hearing and saying and being open to be like, not to respond to say, well, that's not true, or, well, give people the benefit of the doubt, or what about this? But just to listen, just flat out and say, this was my experience, this was my view, this is how I felt like I've overcome it. This is what you can do to help. And then from there, saying, like, wow, that's somebody's truth, that's somebody's story, and us not discounting that. And then taking that information and using our access, no matter what privilege we have, and then going out and fighting in whatever lane that you're in, I think is really important. And so thank you for that. And thank you for sharing those stories, because we all have a powerful story as to
Absolutely.
like, pregnancy almost killed us. So I'm glad that we are alive to tell the
Yes.
story, and to help someone that is going through this, because it's a natural thing. And it's something that, every millions of people are doing every day. And our technology is so advanced. And you're right. You said the statistic that it was safer 30 years ago. So when my mom and when our mothers had us, it was safer for them to have us than for us to have a baby today. And that's crazy.
Like, what part of that makes sense? As we discussed in a prior conversation, it's our responsibility as women and people of color in power positions to make the necessary changes for our children, for our grandchildren. We need to change the systemic racism that we are experiencing, because it is not okay, and it is okay to make white folks feel uncomfortable, because that's how they're going to learn in these changes need to be done. And like I said, we need to make the changes, create the structure, and prove that this little change is going to affect major change down the road.
Absolutely. So what are some key takeaways that you would like us all to know about race and privilege?
Um, well, I think that generally, I just would like everybody, particularly providers, people in senior leadership across the healthcare sector, is to listen to the community. Many, if not all, solutions lie in the communities that are directly impacted by the disparities. And if we understand that, we'll know that this community is going to give us all the answers that we need.
Mm.
And lastly is just educate yourself, particularly to our white allies. Like, being a white ally requires folks to take action.
Mm-hmm.
We can post, we can talk about how awful it is, and we can't believe in statistically, and there's research, but what is your call of action? What are you going to do in order to be a white ally and help us dismantle this system and rebuild it? And it's the lens in which we operate from. What lens are you operating from to make sure that the services that you're rendering are just for everyone?
Yeah.
That's really the biggest takeaway, is really educating yourself. Read, make sure that you know what's going on, because a lot of people, if it's not your problem, it's not a problem, right? So it's everybody's problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And too, like, it's acknowledging that privilege, right? And not feeling sorry for the privilege, and not saying, like, I'm sorry, but like, use it to help us, use it to help people of color, use it to be there and to stand in the gap, to say, okay, I know I have privilege. I know you're not going to come after me. I know I'm believable. I know that. And so I'm going to stand in the gap for a person of color that needs me to stand in the gap for them. And using that to leverage us all. That's how we're going to get out of that.
Exactly. That's all it's so minimal, but it's actually it's a change maker, right? For our white allies to use their privilege,
right,
in dismantling, and disrupting the system that's in place right now. And understanding that it's okay to ask questions, and for leaders, community leaders, people of color, to remember that we always have to cultivate and create spaces for everybody, to feel comfortable, to discuss, to have these difficult conversations. And it's okay to ask questions, because how are we going to learn? And for folks, that are uncomfortable with these topics, to sit in that uncomfortableness, so that way they are going to learn and grow.
Yeah, absolutely. So this has been like such a great conversation. I know you are the book queen. So what are some books and resources that you have that someone could just learn more about just race, privilege, how to start taking a step in action, maternal health, whatever that could be, and some resources that we could find that we can put out. And we'll put all these on our website at LunaYou.com.
So first and foremost, I want to shout out the Equity Institute, Carla Vigil, and Howard. Because they have helped me so much throughout my journey, being equity architects in the education field, and allowing me the space to become that in the healthcare field.
Yeah, we love them.
Meetings are because of their assistance. So, I mean, as far as just generalized talking about racism and wanting to educate yourself, we have everybody now is the world-renowned White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. It's actually, I'm on my second time reading it, because it's just so informative. This is Carla Vigil has put me onto this, which is Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. Yeah. So then we have like a bunch of them, like Do You Want to Talk About Race, Blind Spot, but Ibram is one of my favorites, and How to Be an Anti-Racist. So as far as like just generalized, but I also, just because this is the healthcare field, my favorite. And another thing that we didn't really touch on is, how does racism affect healthcare workers of color?
Yeah.
We have to remember ourselves and remember how draining it is to be part of a system that's perpetuating inequity. So we have to take the time to really unpack those feelings. And my work is to create those spaces for healthcare workers of color, but also create a framework to promote culturally competent practices across the healthcare sector. So keep your eye out for that.
Yeah.
As far as the reading for healthcare workers is Flatline. It's race work in the healthcare and the new economy. It's a great book. I'm not done with it, but so far it's great. Just Medicine. It's a cure for racial inequity in American healthcare. And there's many, many more. I'm sure I'll share them with you and add them to the website because I can be here all day because I'm super excited over my books. But thank you so much for letting me.
Yeah, absolutely. No, those are great like starting grounds for anyone that is looking just to learn more about it. And the first step is like educating yourself beyond yourself. I think there's highly educated people out there that could be ignorant to the knowledge of how racism kind of impacts everyday life and what somebody else could be going through. And so just kind of getting out of our own everyday experiences and kind of going there. So those books are great.
Comfort zone, getting out of our comfort zone. Because we will not grow if we're comfortable where we're at.
Exactly.
And that works directly with racism, right? We have to be uncomfortable, have uncomfortable conversations in order to really absorb the knowledge that is needed in order to move forward.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you have any last closing thoughts for us, Vanessa, as we...
Well, no, I just want to thank everybody, whoever tuned in. Thank you so much. This is my first time. I'm a little nervous. Please follow me on Healthcare Equity on Instagram. I'm looking to really launch this work, and I look forward to working with the community as well as providers and healthcare professionals.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vanessa. I know this conversation was fruitful, and I hope that it doesn't just stop here, that this goes out. Share this, like this, tag someone that you think needs to hear this, tag a mama that you want to be a part of LunaYou, that we can help them. So we end every week we say that you are magical, right? Like for all of our pregnant women, you are magical. You have magic inside of you. And I think this week it's very relevant to say that Black women matter. Black women matter, Black motherhood matters, all of that matters. And know that we see you at LunaYou. We are behind you at LunaYou, and we're helping you speak up for yourself from the inside out. And so know that, and I leave you with that today, that you matter. You matter greatly to the world. And so now also we're offering Spanish speaking tools for women who are solely Spanish speaking to be a part of LunaYou. So if language is a barrier, still send them. They can still be a part. We have materials, resources, and information to help them as well. So that is amazing. Well, thank you so much. That is it. Of course, if you guys have any questions for Vanessa or myself, feel free to reach out to them in the chat, and we'll get those to Vanessa to answer, or myself, and we'll answer those promptly. But thank you guys so much for your time today.
Thank you, guys.